Yes. Can you hear me now? All right. Boom. There we go. Okay. Well, like I said, you didn't hear me. I said it wouldn't be a 5-hour live stream. I didn't mess something up at the top. This is two. It's because I had the logo right over the top of the timer. I apologize. Thanks, everybody. Everybody, we got a lot to cover. I fully expect the Rolling Stones folks to beat on this Beatles fan a little bit. I'm a Rolling Stones fan. That made a good intro, and it is the truth. When I was a kid, there was a lot more Beatles in my house than there was Rolling Stones. But I also know that everybody here is a pretty kind and forgiving subset of 5-Watt World, so I'm sure we'll have a good time, have some fun. Right out of the box, I need to thank Beve, the ever knowledgeable Beve, for being here to moderate for us. I've already started the next script, so in my distraction of all things David Gilmour, I forgot to check in with Beve about today, so he's here with about 6 hours notice, and we should all be such saints of availability and knowledge as my friend Beve. If I if you hear me wandering off into high-watt DR 103s and Fender Fullerton 83 reissue 57s, I've really lost my way, and I'm talking about the new script. I apologize in advance. I have to publicly thank, and I'm still learning my way around StreamYard, but I need to publicly thank artist David Casson, who gave me this last week. Let me see if I can show you this. He did a freehand of the Snorlax with a Strandberg and a 5-Watt World logo on the strap, no less. So, I mean, what's better than that? Too much fun. So I need to thank David for doing that. I also need to thank, as we launch into this, Andy Babiak and Greg Prevost, who did the book. I mean, this is a monster. This is the book. And it's just like the Beatles gear book, also by Andy Babiak. Some of you might have remembered that Andy Babiak, who has his own guitar store now in Pittsford, New York, but worked at the House of Guitars when Rick Beato and I were stumbling in there as teenagers, trying to get them to let us play the expensive guitars, and they were trying their best to not let us play those guitars. They were pretty successful, but Andy was the salesman there then, and I'm sure I used to get him to demo stuff for me and steal lessons off him while he did so. So that's 2 thank yous to Andy. If you're enjoying the channel and you haven't subscribed yet, please take a minute and do that while I go through my intro. And if you have a question that goes along here and you have a minute, head over to the store and grab a hoodie or a t-shirt, Stomp preset pack. You can get to all the right places from the 5wattworld.com website. It's also down in the description. You can easily email me from there as well. And I want to encourage everybody to do that. I really love to hear from folks in the channel, and I read all the comments and answer all the email that come in, and I really enjoy talking to you directly. Really enjoy it. All right. I'm also working with Patreon, and the link for Patreon is there. And if you're at the $10 a month or higher level, you get early access to all the videos. Before I go any further, I need to thank Jason Laughlin, who probably will show up in the chat, who composed, played, and produced the intro music that you saw him. I actually pulled together that intro clip today so that you could see Jason playing at least another minute's worth of that great intro. As I said in the thank yous on the video, Jason, we probably know him best through True Fire for his country bends and swing, country western swing chops, but he's an entire career as a studio musician, and he's been asked on more than one occasion to play Keef-like parts. He certainly showed us he can do that here, and I put a link to his material in the description as well. I'm going to use my standard format of covering a few things that came up in the comments, try to get ahead of your questions on some things, and then I'm going to bring in a ringer, as always, as part of my online plan. I'm going to have Zac Childs here to help answer questions about Teles and Voxes and Fender amps. We'll bring Zac on board here in a minute. Zac might be joining us from the offices at True Tone, who True Tone's not a sponsor of the channel, but they are friends of the channel, and we thank them in advance for sharing Zac with us here this afternoon. First, my request for votes on part 2 of Keith's gear seems to be a resounding yes. I imagine everybody that would show up for this is in that camp. If you're doing content on YouTube, you probably have already realized that there's kind of a curse around doing a part 2. It's pretty hard to not get a general yawn from the body of viewers when you do a part 2 to something. So I'll shamelessly tell you that, the more views we get on part 1, the sooner it'll be easy for me to spend the 2 weeks it'll take me to build part 2. So tell all your friends and go back and run the thing in the background while you're mowing the lawn or something. Which brings me to a short rant and an explanation of some confusion that happened during the launch of this video. So I put the video up on Saturday morning. I like to launch on Thursdays. The thing was huge. It was probably 20 to 30% bigger than a lot of the videos that I try to make in that 30-minute time limit. But there was one curse word, and I even researched this. There was one curse word, the quote where Keith Richards is talking about going to 5 strings, 2 fingers, and 1. And I'm not going to say it here because I don't want to lose the monetization here. And after 12 hours of the video being up and 30,000 views, the guys at YouTube saw fit to pull the monetization and pull all the ads. I can't do these without the advertising revenue, so I had to pull it down and put it back up. There was actually one error in the original video, which I was glad to fix with this chance to reload, which was I had a photograph of Blind Willie McTell in the place of Blind Willie Johnson. And I was glad to find the one and only photograph of Blind Willie Johnson and add that back to the video. So that was the good news of the whole thing. And actually the video is still doing well. It would probably be, right in one of my top videos out of the last 10 if it wasn't for the loss of those views. And I know a lot of you folks probably were there at the beginning. So thank you for getting in there early. But that explains why you might have, if you have notifications turned on, why you might have gotten notifications both Saturday morning and then Sunday morning really early, probably before some of you were up. And not you folks in England, but you know what I'm saying. The majority of other questions were folks, we're going to talk about Micawber and some specifics that came up with Zac. But a lot of folks were asking about Keith's guitars that really would be in the next video, that things that came after the 1971 video. And I have to say, of course, that was a bigger part of me listening to the Stones, which really was after 71. So people asking about black Tele customs, models, the Les Paul Juniors that came later, Music Man silhouettes, and the Gibson L6Ss. Those would be in a part 2 video. So as I said, we're going to talk about, people asked about Micawber bridge pickup. People asked about the specific G tuning that he uses. And I can address that here, but better than doing that, I'm going to bring Zac on board and take a look at the comments after I do so. I'm going to get my rambling stuff out of the way here, and let's add Zachary to the stream. And I like this view. Can you hear me, Zac?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can. I really like that shirt.
Well, thank you.
I don't live in Nashville. I have to go much in upstate New York. I don't know if I get served in places where I'm at, One of my favorite Zac stories was the day I met Zac. This is really early in the channel, and he's in the True Tone Lounge there. Yes.
Yes, I'm in the lounge.
He's in the lounge. So I am a huge fan of the True Tone Lounge and Zac's work there. So we got on the phone. We kind of did this moment where we were both, starstruck by each other. And that evening, Zac, he's a good boy. He took his mom out for some barbecue that night, and he walked into the barbecue place, and there was a guy wearing a 5 Watt World t-shirt. I mean, this must have been a really early t-shirt before I went to the bigger merch stuff. And I was just tickled because that was the first sighting in the wild of a 5 Watt World shirt.
Yeah, it's that when I really realized what a big deal you are, and that's when I started sending you money. Yeah, I hope the latest check got there.
Yeah, exactly. And then we got Zac's channel going, and Zac's done gangbusters, and everybody that isn't watching Zac will be after this hour, because you're going to see that he is Zac is the ringer that I often turn to, as I did today, asking him questions for the Gilmore script. And anything, and I didn't even go to you about the fact that his Candy Apple Red is a Fullerton reissue from about 83, right? Correct. So that's a whole story that's in the new script. And like I said, don't let me get pulled over into there. So, all right. So
stay on Keith.
Exactly. We got to stay on Keith here. Yeah. This gets a little confusing. The whole Keith on Keith thing. Yeah. It's weird. So, one of the limitations I have so far, I haven't worked it out where you can share a slideshow. You can with StreamYard. But the thing that I wanted to talk about first was the bridge pickup on Micawber. And the fact that it's been reported that that is actually, I'm sure it's changed maybe from time to time, but that is a out of a lap steel. And I can show you a picture. The limitation here is it's going to be on the screen for about 10 or 11 seconds, boys and girls. So here it is. If you look, you can see there's only 2 screws holding this in place. This screw hole is empty. Can you see the pointer on the screen? Probably not. That front screw hole is empty. We can bring that up again as we need to. So Zac, now I've seen it reported that Micawber is both a 53 and a 54. And I've seen it both ways, you know, with all early Fenders, and really kind of Fenders, anytime where they're crossing over a year, you could have parts that have been in the rack for quite a while and then get put together into a guitar in the next calendar year. Is that right?
Exactly. And so it gets confusing because I think in the past people would date things just by the neck date.
Right.
But then what the consensus now is that you date it by the last made original part. And so you look at all the parts, and if the pots or whatever it is, whatever that has the latest date, you don't go by what's the earliest date, because that could have been sitting around for a little while. But usually it's not like a huge gap. A lot of times it's going to be a year or 2 tops. So and so there gets to be that confusion at times, because you know, somebody can date it just based on the neck. And the fact is, you know, if the neck was made at the end of 53 and then the whole guitar was put together at the beginning of 54, well, it's like, what is it? Well, it's a 54 because that's when it was completed.
That's when it left the factory.
Yeah.
Right. So in this case, so in a 53, 54 guitar, how different is that broadcaster pickup than the lap steel pickups that it grew from? Because as people might not realize, that pickup originally, you know, the first guitars were Esquires. They were 1 pickup guitars. They were a Spanish style, you know, sit in your lap guitar that had a single pickup in the bridge, mounted the same way, and they were coming right out of lap steels, right?
Right. Now I don't know how many different pickups have been in Micawber, but I can tell you the pickup that's in it now, because I spoke with Pierre, his tech. You know, I met him in person up in Connecticut, and so I'm just going to tell this brief story just because it's kind of fun. So you know, Brad Paisley, I worked for Brad Paisley as his guitar tech many years ago. He hired a guy named Dave Rose, who was Mick Jagger's tech, and he was also kind of a backline tech with the Stones throughout the 90s and onward. And so he was brought on, but he didn't really know Brad well. And so I was brought out of mothballs. I was, you know, because I'd been his tech in the early 2000s. And so this is around 2010. Okay. And they flew me out just to kind of help out. And really, David didn't need any help as far as technically, but it was more about the just keeping things going smoothly. And so we were up in Connecticut. Go ahead.
And if I can interrupt, everybody might not understand that you went to Belmont University with Brad Paisley and played in bands with him when you guys were in college. So when Brad went looking for a tech, he went to a guy that he trusted.
Yeah. So I was his first tech. Right. So it's 2010. I'm helping Dave out some, which is it's really about me being moral support kind of for Brad, really. Mm-hmm. And so all of a sudden we're up in Connecticut, and Dave's back there, and all of a sudden he says, "Hey, this is my friend Pierre." And I'm like, "You mean Keith's tech?" And he was like, "Yeah." So and so the one question I asked was, I said, you know, because I had to know about the bridge pickup. I said, what is the bridge pickup? And he said, well, everyone talks about it. You know, I'm not going to imitate his accent or anything, but he basically said that, well, what he did say was that it was a late 60s lap steel pickup of all things, which I was floored by that, because you would think, you know, if someone says I put a lap steel pickup in my Tele, most of the time what they're referring to is a early lap steel pickup that's flat pole, that's basically the same thing as an early broadcaster, Telecaster, Nocaster pickup. That would be everyone's assumption. Well, it's not. it's a lap steel pickup from a late 60s, lap steel. And so it has staggered pole pieces, and it would have originally been lacquer potted. Now, I'm not sure if that's been modified. I wasn't smart enough to ask that question, but that really puts it as being a very different pickup, because it's going to have a different type of wire around it. It's going to have a different type of magnets, and also they're going to be staggered pole pieces, where they're all of the magnets are above the flat work.
Right. Well, and it's good to remember that the guitars that I talked about, the Teles that I talked about, his first Telecasters were new guitars in the 60s.
Right.
So it's not surprising that, a 60s constructed pickup would resonate for Keith Richards, when those really were his roots, those first guitars.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Wow, that's great. See, I knew I had the right guy on the show.
Well, thanks.
All right. So let's bring this back. Let's see. This book was published in, when did Andy put this out? And you should all, if you can't wait for the next one, you should just go buy this and read ahead. This was 2013. So this really is not that long ago. And so what year were you talking about?
2010.
2010. So it's of course, we don't know. It's not listed when the photograph was done. Let me put this back up here. Can you see that they're staggered? Yeah, they look kind of like they're staggered, don't they? Especially in the middle there.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's great. That's great detail. That's wonderful. So one of the reasons I knew when I wrote the script that I was going to want to do a live stream and I was going to want to have you here, because I read a little bit about when at the point in the story when they go on the road and they go to Australia and they get a backline. Actually, for the second time, they're backlined with Fender Showman amps. So this would have been 65, but they showed blonde piggyback Showman, right?
Right.
And I read about the Showmans, but I'm not an amp tech, and I know you're not an amp tech, but you've had your hands in a lot of them over the years. So it sounded to me like those early piggyback Showman. So this is a 4.6L6 amp, right?
Correct.
Famous for, and actually I was just reading about this today in regards to the Gilmore Ampeg FB2, which is based on a Showman preamp. It sounded like they were more of a mix of sort of brown face amps on their way to black face amps. They had a harmonic 2-bass tremolo, right?
Well, see, here comes the rub on blonde Showmans, because you have the blonde Showmans that have a presence knob are true brown amps, but they're later ones that have blonde Tolex covering, but then they have a black faceplate and they don't have a presence knob. And basically they're the same thing as a black face twin reverb, but without reverb. So it's really a black face amp in blonde Tolex. And so those amps were made in 64.
I was going to say, so the transition was 63, 64.
Yeah. So it would, we would need to have some good photos of these shows, but
right.
It would be most likely that they're actually blackface amps with blonde Tolex on them.
And as you said, then basically what they are is twin reverbs of the day without reverb.
Right. And that changes the sound of them, and it changes the amount of headroom, because when you take the reverb circuit out of a twin or any Fender amp, it ends up giving it more clean headroom and more volume.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, it does give it more clean headroom. It wouldn't give it a more overall volume. And then, of course, the fact that the Showman has a closed back cabinet and a 15, that, it's really going to produce a lot more sound in front of it than even a twin reverb. And that the 15, a lot of people don't think of a 15 as being a good guitar speaker, but it really is. It's really a great speaker, and it actually works really well at dispersing sound in a wide fashion, instead of it being like a beam coming at you. Like 10s and even 12s can be somewhat beamy, but a 15 really disperses sound. And you have to remember that on those concerts, the amps were not mic'd up.
Right. That's what I was just going to say.
The PA system could only handle vocals. And so only the vocal mics went through the PA, everything else. So the Showman would have been a fantastic amp to play live because it was closed back. It had a 15. The sound would disperse a lot. It has, at least 85 watt, 80, 85 watts of
85 watts,
power.
Right.
And it would be a great amp, and they could, of course, if they wanted to turn them all the way up and get some grit out of them, they absolutely could. So.
And probably did. So they moved from using Vox AC30s.
Yeah.
The Australian promoter wouldn't bring their backline for amps, but they had actually used them in the States when the Voxes got delayed or something, if I remember correctly. So and an AC30 is famously loud,
right?
And from doing the work with Brad,
yes,
how loud they really are.
Yeah, and I've had my head in front of loud AC30s, before, where it's like, do you hear that? Do you hear that little sound? But yes, they are loud, but they're not nearly as loud as a Showman.
Right.
So.
And as you said, nothing was mic'd up. So here they had an opportunity to have not only a louder, and we were talking about this, when I was working on the script, the tones across these years, it's fascinating. There's a lot of clean sounds, really not a lot of breakup, there's no real dirt in the catalog until you get to Satisfaction to speak of. And he's playing a whole variety of guitars, getting this clean sound. And so you want a big clean sound. The idea that it would be distributed, all of that stuff sounds like it would really appeal to them in the Showman. Yeah. Fascinating. Really good.
I mean, that was Fender's, top of the line, stage amp.
Right.
And again, it's from the era when the drummer, the whole band, they had to get their volume from their amplifier or from their instrument itself. Otherwise, you weren't going to hear it.
Yeah. Somebody was pulling us back here in the questions. And I love having BV as a moderator because he's answering them as we go. So somebody was asking what the specific humbucker was, and BV says it was a Gibson 50s PAF turned backwards. Well, and by that he means that the pole pieces are towards the middle of the guitar instead of at the front, and that's really just cosmetic, as we know.
Yeah, it some people feel like it can make a difference. It's subtle.
Well, the only reason the pole pieces exist in the PAFs were Seth Lover, the first ones just had a flat cover, and the guys in marketing were like, oh, you need adjustability. It's all about adjustability now. Yeah. And so they added the pole piece adjustments. So, and then Rob Namowitz is saying that the 15-inch speakers with a tone ring cabinet. What's a tone ring cabinet?
Yes. So that was a type of cabinet where it had basically another circular cutout piece that basically made the speaker to where it had even more. It was almost like it would act more like a 16 or 17-inch speaker. So it actually gave it more throw, and it enhanced the speaker. So that was a design that a number of cabinet makers have used through the years. But I mean,
so you're saying there was a space around the speaker in the baffle.
Yeah. So in the baffle, it's flat, and then it would have a ring, and then the speaker would go on, and it was beveled and such in a way to make it, to kind of simulate the speaker being bigger than it actually was.
Even bigger.
Yeah.
Fascinating. That's great.
And of course it was a JBL, D130F or D131 most of the time. And so those are those, they have the metal, aluminum domed speakers, and they're they're a great speaker. They're probably rated in the 80 watt range. So probably they were pretty much matched to the cabinet. People think JBL speakers, the old ones, had some high rating, but they don't. I mean, even the 12-inch speakers only had about a 60 watt rating, and they, you could blow them. So.
And those JBLs just weigh a ton.
Yes. Yeah. Because of the cast.
Yeah. I've handled the 120s. I've never handled the 130s, but yeah, everything just weighs a lot there. So cool. Very cool. All right. Let's see what we've got here in question. I looked for confirmation on what that front pickup is, and I didn't find it, but I had heard a long time ago that it was a 50s. I just couldn't find a citation for it, which is why I didn't say so in the video.
It's most likely a PAF or a patent number, humbucker.
Right. Yeah. There are pictures of Keith with that guitar I'm not sure I squeezed him into the video right when he got it. And there's times when he played it and he was photographed playing that guitar before the humbucker was put in the front. And I think it was Newman Jones who put it in, did that for him, which actually probably we should talk about. The other thing a lot of people asked about was the actual tuning, the specific tuning that I quoted in the video. A lot of people corrected me, quote unquote.
Okay.
And that tuning came right out of Babiak. I mean, right out of Rolling Stones gear. It is possible for somebody even of Babiak's depth to not have it right, but I really doubt it. Yeah, I think that there's probably that the fact that the tuning is slightly different than what's typically thought of as the top 5 strings of a G tuning. It just is. It's just that's where he was playing with it. So that seems to be where that is for that. All right. Oh, I'm looking in the chat and I'm recognizing lots of names.
Yeah. And again, that tuning and that style, which it of course goes back to Ry Cooder and him playing on sessions for them and Keith picking that up. And of course he did his own thing with it. But Ry Cooder was certainly a big influence. And when you've heard Ry Cooder play rhythm on certain things, you can really hear where Keith got some of his shtick. And again, Keith did his own thing with it.
Right. Yeah. I had a couple of top chats here, so let me cover some business. Shawnee's a Cubs fan. One says, "What tube is the one in the 5-watt World logo? Also, my philosophy on guitars and gear is that you should try as much as you can. Know what works for you." You get no argument from me, Sean. That certainly was the route that led me to having fewer, but still a bunch of guitars. It's not, as I've said lots of times before, it's not a contest where Jake Stewart, my buddy in Texas, always thinks I'm pointing it out to him. It's not a contest where an Esquire into a Champ wins. It's not a contest. It's make music. The 5-watt World logo was it started life as something I saw online that looked like an old Big Bottle 6L6 or even a Big Bottle 6V6. But I wanted it to be a 6V6 because I wanted it to be a Champ tube. And I have it's not here right now. It's in the room next door. I have what I call a desktop Champ that Dan Lurie at FYD Amps designed with me, and I built it, and all the tubes are up. And so when I play the 5, mostly that's the 5-watter I play now when I'm not playing the new Fender Champ, Vibrachamp Reverb. So the tube's right there. And to me, that was a 5-watt thing, and me putting in the 70s style 5 and everything. That's all like my dad was a college art professor, and I didn't throw the ball around a lot as a kid. My dad's response usually was, or we could draw, which is something I did a lot of as a kid. So that's what that is. And we had another one here. Tony Davis, thanks, Tony, says, "I want to publicly thank Zac for turning me on to the True Tone H2O, my favorite combo pedal ever. Great tones." That's good.
Well, thank you, Tony.
That's good. Your boss must have gotten to him.
Yeah, he got to him, and it all worked out.
Tony slit that. Tony, we can't thank you enough, man. That was
yes.
right on target. So really good. People berate me when I run down and name names, but let me say I recognize lots and lots of folks here. We did have actually a big jump in subscribers. We recently broke 180,000 subscribers. We're pushing to do the 200 mark by the end of the summer or the middle of the summer. We'll see how many videos I do. Every time I put out videos, we end up with about 1,000 more subscribers. So, all right. And my editor drops in. I don't quite understand TCM's carrier has arrived. What's the carrier reference? I don't get it. Zac can't help me with this.
I don't know. Is he talking about air conditioner units?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
Or is he? He's got all the planes are on deck. I don't know.
I guess. Yeah. TCM comes in. I'm late, but I made it. I've got some stuff in the comment here. So we touched on the tuning. We talked about Showman. I think it's time to do questions. Where are we? Oh yeah, we're halfway through here. Oh man, time flies. So Carol Thatcher, which has which that little icon could be a picture of Margaret Thatcher. I'm not sure from here. I can't tell. So I'm sure Keith himself would say that the modern day obsession with gear is all out of proportion to poor quality original music being made today. Stop being so obsessed with gear. FFS. I'm not sure I want to know what that stands for. Call it OWG. Yeah. Anybody that does videos where they're talking about gear inevitably will say, play what you have, play more, spend more time. I actually love your story, Zach, where you had to sell a pile of stuff to buy your Esquire.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I have a 57 Esquire that I use in most of my shows, and it really cured, and this might sound counterintuitive, but it really cured me of a lot of gear lust. Because
Really?
it's like, I love that guitar. I sold a bunch of things to buy this one guitar, and then it's the only thing I play. And so even when I go out and play shows out on the road, which, I played some last month, and I'm going to go play some more shows with a buddy of mine, and these are like, this isn't, I'm not playing in huge auditoriums, and these are casinos and different things like that. And usually I'll take deluxe reverb or I have a little Vox AC10, and then I'll take that Esquire, and it just kind of cured me. It's like I don't even look at other Telecasters, and also I'm a Telecaster guy. That's all I play. It's all I want to play. I don't, if I look at other stuff, it's mainly a different instrument. Like I bought a Mandocello, and just to be out there. I guess.
Have you done a video with your Mandocello yet?
I have. I did one. It was a Baxendale conversion, and so that's.
I know. I was excited to hear it, and I apologize for missing it. I didn't think I missed any of your videos. I mean it. Well, there's not many people. I watch them all. I watch yours. I watch Beato's. I watch Jonathan Cordy, everyone, so yeah. Well, it's very cool. Well, the part of the Esquire story that I like so much is that you had some amazing guitars built by Dan Strain, and it showed to me the level of friendship that you and Dan have. Is when you were talking about the possibility of getting this Esquire, he said, well, you need to sell your Danacasters. And you were like, what? You're telling me to sell my handmade guitars by my friend so that I can have this other guitar? Yeah,
because he's a really good friend, and he said, I'll make you another Danacaster down the road, when you need it. He said, and then he's the one that did all of the restoration on the Esquire. Right. So he took care of, he refinished it. He took the neck to be refretted. The new nut put on there. He took care of he was the point man on all that. So he's a very good friend and a good guy.
That's fantastic. Jack Lee tells us what FFS is, reminds us what FFS is, and I won't say it on camera, but that makes sense. I wanted to read this. Paul Casillas says, I'd be taking the bridge if all my guitars were stolen like Keith's were in France. Ugh. Somebody pointed out in the comments that they thought it was a bit of understatement that I said that the guitars were stolen while the guys were sleeping upstairs. They pointed out that there might have been some help in their lack of conscious attention to the noise happening downstairs, or hey, maybe they very quietly carried out the guitars. Who knows? But I mean, as I've said of other artists, people, when they confront me about me quoting somebody like Eric Clapton from the 70s, and they're like, well, Clapton said, and I was like, it was the 70s, and Eric wasn't sober yet. So anyway, so yeah. So Terry says that Carol is Thatcher's daughter. Okay. See, I just learned stuff here from you guys all the time. All right, let's do some questions. Whoa, we got some more. Robert Davidson says, now this is going to cross a line, and I want people to understand that they might be removed from the channel for commenting on my facial hair. It's happened before. Robert Davidson says, with money, so I'm going to let slide. How does your wife put up with your mustache? I'm divorced. There, I think we covered it. Are there any modern Alt Grendel? Hey, our buddy Alt Grendel says, are there any good modern day clones of the Micawber bridge pickup? I got to believe there's somebody out there building Tele pickups in a 60s lap steel style. I'm going to Google that right after this stream.
Yeah, you know what you're looking for is just a mid to late 60s style Telecaster pickup, because
Right.
I mean the only difference between the lap steel and the Telecaster is the base on it, which is why on Micawber you only see two screws being used to hold it in place. So there's no other real difference. So you would be looking for something that was, you know, staggered pole pieces and Alnico, you know, I forget, was it Alnico 3 or Alnico 5? I don't know why I'm blanking on that right now. But yeah, basically you would want what, and a lot of people would call that like late 60s or Buckaroo or different things like that. They would give different, I think OC Duff and a few others make pickups that are of that style. So,
I'm surprised you didn't pick up your phone, call a friend, and double check with Larry Ellis on that.
I should have.
Yeah, you can still. you have these high end buddies. Somebody was asking earlier if we would at some point, and he actually was asking the two of us to collaborate on a Guitars of Mike Campbell video.
Oh wow!
Because it would overlap so heavily between your area of expertise, of course. I don't know how many hours a Guitars of Mike Campbell video would have to be. You can kind of, I mean, I didn't cover every single, I don't think it's in the book, every single guitar that Keith ever touched or owned. You know, I'm really doing on the Gilmore video, I'm doing the guitars that you saw that he played out on the road. But then, you know, he had his sale in 2019 and he sold 160. Well, I'm not talking about 160 guitars. He was a collector. He became a collector as soon as he could afford to be. But, you know, it's interesting. Somebody else was asking me to do one about Steve Howe. And one of the hard things about doing history videos on the channel is that there are stories. Well, here's a perfect example. I have all the material I need to do the video on orange amps, but the amp videos don't do as well as the guitar videos. I mean, by about half. And as much as I dig a project and learn, I love learning this stuff, or I wouldn't be doing this. I mean, I joke that this is the hardest part-time job I ever created, because I still work the number of hours I used to when I did academic administration. It is still a job. So you have to do things that you're going to get views in the end. And it's tough because there are lots of great, and in the end, it's great stories. You know, I do some fun ones every year. I try to throw myself one that's a big interest area. Perry was really interested in doing a train wreck one, and I was interested in train wreck from the connection with the Z-Wreck amps that, you know, they did with Dr. Z, and Z's a great guy. I had a wonderful time talking to Z about these things. That was a really good one. That video just now, a year and change later, just broke 100,000. Now that's a gigantic number of views, but you don't make a ton of money on a video that's at that number when the Les Paul video is at, you know, 1.3 million views. And so, like I said, and I'm saying this partly because Larry Power is asking about Alexis Corner, and he's come up in a number of videos. I was berated by a number of fans because I was so casualist to call him Alex. I was quoting a lot of times other people who knew him and called him that back in the day. But I know there are people actually who follow the channel who actually saw that band play. You know, who are 10 years older than me and were kind of sneaking into the back of clubs around the Marquee or the Ellie. Anyway, the Marquee and the other one, and seeing Alexis Corner play, you know, back in the day. So Robert Davidson gives yet a bigger soup top chat to apologize. I wouldn't ban you. You're throwing money at me, Robert. That usually works. I was an economics major in college. I understand how money works to the extent that I was, you know, kind of an okay economics major in college. So never apologize for a digression. We are all about the big digressions. So All right. So let's, BB's pulling us some questions back. That's great, BB. That's just what I need help with. So Keith, question for Zac. Oh, of course. Always the guy in the Liberty plaid shirt. Ryan wants to know, what's the difference between a Telecaster and an Esquire? I always thought the Esquire had one pickup, but then I saw Zac's Esquire. He's confusing the world, and now he has to pay. So,
yes.
Okay,
yes.
Zachary, let's have it.
So, okay. So an Esquire, when we think of the normal, by the time Fender was really mass producing instruments, an Esquire meant a one pickup Telecaster. And the body was still routed for a neck pickup, but it was not installed. And so instead, it had a three-way switch that had the bridge pickup through the tone circuit, the bridge pickup straight through without the tone circuit, and then the bridge pickup through a series of caps and resistors to give that kind of thuddy dead sound, similar to what they did on the full-fledged Telecaster. So, but you could send off money. You could send off, I believe in the 50s was around $30, which I guess would be closer to $300 in today's money. And you would get a pick guard and a pickup. And so that you could change your Esquire into a Telecaster. Okay, now I'm just telling you that's not what happened on my guitar. On my guitar, it was an Esquire. It only had one pickup when I bought it. However, it had been painted this rattle can blue at some point. And so because of that, and because I was going to remove the blue paint, and also the original pickguard was destroyed, it had been painted yellow, and like a really lurid, hideous yellow, and we couldn't get all the paint off. And by the time we got most of the paint off, it had warped up, because the pick guards on mid 50s Fenders are, especially the Telecasters, are exceedingly thin, and which, it's just, who knows, different suppliers, whatever was happening, but it completely warped and it was unusable. So at that point I thought, okay, am I going to get a Repro Esquire guard, or do I just want to go ahead and get a Telecaster pick guard and put it on there? And I went ahead and did that. And originally I had a Ron Ellis like tall neck pickup in it, but then I was able to acquire a real mid 50s neck pickup that I put in there. And that's what's been in it for at least a year now.
Right. Now, my understanding is that actually all of the original bodies were actually routed. By the time they were in production guitars, all of them were routed for two pickups.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was the guys in marketing that were pushing for a two pickup guitar. And there was a little bit of fun between the guys in sales and marketing and Leo trying to keep his cash flow going. And I'd heard that, you always hear these stories about Leo selling guitars off the dock. And there are stories about people showing up at the factory to buy a guitar, buying a guitar off the dock, and they're kind of like, I really wish this Esquire has, I really like this particular guitar, but I wish I had two pickups. Oh, well, wait right there. I think we can fix that for you.
We can fix that for you, because all they had to do was, remove the pick guard and, do a little modification, and all of a sudden you have an Esquire that has two pickups.
Right.
And if you go back to, without getting confusing, but originally the two pickup Fender guitar was going to be called the Esquire. And then they had trouble with the whole nonsense with the necks not having truss rods in them. And then when they came out with the full production guitar, instead of being black with a white pick guard, two pickups, and being called an Esquire, it was blonde, black pick guard, two pickups, and it was a Broadcaster.
Right. There you go. Tony Davis wants to know what album is on the turntable in the True Tone Lounge. That is great.
Ooh, that's
a great question. Tony, you get bonus points for that, man. But you can reach.
It is Paul Whiteman and his orchestra, All in Fun.
So do people know who Paul Whiteman is? Paul Whiteman was a big band guy from the late 20s and early 30s.
Right.
Yeah. Paul Whiteman was early enough that probably the rhythm major timekeeper in that band was a banjo for a good portion of the Paul Whiteman time, and then switched over to would have been a guitar unamplified, sort of Freddie Green kind of thing.
I'm glad he asked, because that's the owner of True Tone, Bob Weil. That's his old True Tone radio, and that's his album that
that's
I
his
think
record?
he got from his mother.
Oh,
And
that's great.
so and that's the same album that's been on there the whole time for all the lounge episodes. And I remember looking at it and looking at Paul White and figuring out who he was.
Right.
And then, but then I was glad somebody asked, because I hadn't thought about that in a long time. And I was like, oh, it's an old, band leader from like the 30s. So,
yeah. 20s and 30s. Right. I got another question for Zac here. They want to know, Zac, what your favorite Fleetwood Mac song is, and can you give a Peter Green, Kerwin era answer separately if he prefers.
Okay.
There you go. Could be a two-parter if you like.
Yes. Let's see. I love, as far as what people think of as the latter era Fleetwood Mac with Lindsey Buckingham, would be, is it Never Coming Back Again?
Yeah.
So that Off the Rumors album, that would be my favorite, later era, Fleetwood Mac.
That weird syncopated, finger-picked.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Buckingham thing. Right.
It's basically just Lindsey and a guitar.
Right.
And I don't think it's Fleetwood Mac without Lindsey Buckingham, as far as the later era. As the Peter Green era, I love their instrumental, Albatross. Isn't that the?
Yeah. That would be that's on. I'm terrible with album names, but yeah.
Is that on like Mr. Wonderful? I can't remember which album it's off of, but because there's so many different compilations and the way things were released in the UK versus the US, and so I love that instrument, but I love his singing also. When I say him, I'm talking about Peter Green. I love that. And then of course, if you're going to Danny Kerwin, you're talking about the very end of the era with Peter Green.
And they were a straight blues band still.
Yeah, and I'm kind of blanking on that. Probably Oh Well or something like. Yeah.
Cool. Derek LeBrun is asking, any plans to do a Schecter or ESP company history video? I'd be interested in some more modern, obscure companies if there are some cool stories to tell. The ESP story actually is a very cool story, and I brushed up against it when I was researching the Ibanez one. I actually have a very good fan in Japan, a guy named that goes by the handle of Fat Philosopher. And it was actually just on me the other day to talk about, sent me a note, I think in the Patreon group, asking me, talking about the founder of ESP. He's a huge impact on the Japanese guitar industry. I'm not going to come up with the name right now. Hitori. Yeah, I can't come up with it. So yeah, I would see doing that. I will say that the video that I made about the Gem guitar, which I covered the Ibanez history, kind of had a slow start, but has done really well over time. So sometimes the videos are just, since they're references and referred to in the business as an evergreen video, they do well over the long term. That's the thing. Honestly, one of the things I've been thinking about doing is, it's been over 2 years since I made the original trio of the Les Paul, the Stratocaster, and the Telecaster videos. And when I look at those, not only do I look terrified because I was really early with the teleprompter. I mean, all the Telecaster video comments were full of, does this guy ever blink? Well, I was editing out stuff, but I was also like looking at my teleprompter like this, trying, and I'd never done a video with a teleprompter before, et cetera. So, and as I remind people, it's the trick is writing the scripts, and then the secondary trick is reading the scripts. But so I've thought about actually remaking the original videos, but the Les Paul video is still in the top 10 videos every month. It just keeps perking along. And I mean, it's a great history when you look at all the artists and all that kind of stuff. Same thing with the Telecaster video. The Stratocaster video actually passed the Tele video. Last time I looked, the Tele video is at 930,000 views. And somebody was putting comments like, come on, guys, let's push this thing up over 1 million. So I'm all for that. So people giving their votes on the on their favorite tunes from the Fleetwood Mac era. Going back. Paul Casillo says he's in Buffalo, New York. He's ordering a sub sandwich. Wants to know if anybody wants anything. He'll pick it up for him.
I'll take a meatball.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think part of that is that, it's like, what do they call those kind of sandwiches where you live? Because that's like soda pop. It's like very regional information. I think that's always very funny. Let's go back here and see if we missed any other questions here, BB. BV answers Mike Adams. He says that the lap steel pickup was from a Fender Champion. That's the sort of thing BV would know. I have to just take a minute to say again how much fun it is for me to have BV as a moderator, because I've yet to see him stumped. I want to have people on who can stump BB. I'm not sure there is such a thing. The variety of information he knows just puts me on my head every time. Tony Davis says, what was the green Tele Keith played at his 75th birthday bash? Well, as I was saying, he has a lot of guitars. Although I have seen a lot of pictures. I think it must be from that show. When I was looking for photographs to use for the thumbnail for this today, there were a lot of pictures of him playing that. And when you say green, it kind of looks, God forbid, I'm going to say this about a Fender, but it kind of looks like a Pelham blue with a yellow top coat on it. I mean, green is it's not a bright, it's not a Kelly green kind of thing. So
I believe that's a 67 or 68 maple cap, Lake Placid blue, Tele that's,
with a big fade.
Yeah.
There you go. How do you know that?
Because I've seen pictures of those shows, and I remember noticing that guitar and thinking, oh, that's not one I've seen him play as much as like Micawber and such. And so
right.
I've seen him play more of that era guitar lately. Which is interesting because that's going to have the pickup that's like in Micawber, but what was in it, from the factory. Yeah. So it would make sense that he would be playing these mid to late 60s Teles.
Remind me what years they were threaded steel saddles.
They started doing, threaded saddles around late 58, 59. And so that's when they became threaded, and they stayed threaded until 68. In 68, they became smooth steel that had 2 grooves in them. Wow. And that's what you see all through from 68 until the early 80s. So
a much bigger period of time than I thought.
Right.
Excuse me. It was harder to find a picture than I thought it would be, actually. Yeah. A good, close up. That was the key. So I'm going back looking for pictures here, looking for questions, I mean. David Kornblatt says Telecaster guys are repressed Strat dudes.
Could be. I won't deny it.
Well, didn't you start life as a Strat guy?
I did. I started as a Strat guy, and then I think just as the years went on, I just became enamored with the Tele and the Tele players and the simplicity of it, and then. I think the middle pickup on a Strat can get in the way of my playing at times. And I think that's actually more of a, kind of a pockmark on my playing technique than anything else. I think that sometimes, I play with a pick and fingers a lot. And so sometimes I will hit the middle pickup on a Strat. And that's another reason kind of why I like a Tele.
Yeah. Well, Eric Johnson is famous for playing in exactly the same position, and he has the middle pickup pushed down, even to the point where now I understand the middle pickup on his signature model is wound a little hotter, so it balances, and yet it's pushed way down against the guard, so it's out of his way. So Justin Childs says, absolutely love your content. Need to thank Zac for all his contributions. Really helped me out. Thank you both for everything you do. Justin, thanks for being here. Thanks for saying nice things about my good friend Zac and me. I really appreciate it. Let's see here.
Who's that again?
That is Justin Childs. Is that a relative?
Not that I know of, but you know.
I totally blew right past that.
Yeah.
But it was
he might be sending me papers or something.
Yeah, it could be. Could be. We are almost up at the hour here. What time is it? Oh, I can't even see my clock here. Or maybe the time's up. I'd ask for your last questions, but Perry would ask us what the best place to get a pizza in town is, which I can rely on him for so many things, and that was one of them. Oh, somebody wants to know. Perry says you can borrow one of his Strats as needed anytime. Okay. Yeah, he has some really nice Strats.
Yeah, I really like. You know, I'm a big fan of mid-50s V-necks. So anything from 55 through 58 would
That's good. You're on record as letting him know, what he needs to have when you call.
You can just send it down, because if it's got a soft V on it, I like it.
Yeah. So BB has here from a question from @E20HC, wants to know if the Dan Armstrong guitar was stolen in France, or does he still have it in his collection? So I actually did a little. People were asking in the comments how many of those guitars were recovered. And I do understand that the original prototype was one of the guitars that was recovered. I don't think the 59 has ever surfaced. I couldn't find anywhere that it said that made its way back. I guess if you're Keith Richards, you probably could get yourself another 59, a different 59. So it was nice. And before we sign off, my buddy David Barber is here. From Barber Electronics, good friend of the channel. Says I look really comfortable today. I'm just exhausted from writing so much. And then Zach is my emotional support animal.
Yeah, that's good. I have my own emotional support animal.
Yeah, you're kind of Snorlax like the way you're laying back there today. Yeah, there you go.
You know, yeah, it's better. It's better than being all worked up.
That's your superpower. That's great.
I wish it was.
Yeah. All right. Okay, everybody. Well, thanks a lot for being here. I really appreciate it. Zach, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me out.
Yeah. And everybody, if you have not subscribed, I can't believe you're not watching Zach when I do. We all have to go watch the Manticello episode right after this. I'll be doing that during dinner.
And you can also watch the fuzz video that I did, where I talked about Keith and the fuzz and the inspiration for it and stuff like that.
Yeah. And actually, it's funny that I put that picture of that's good. Jeff Macrelane, because he has an original FC1, and he's got a picture of he's going, like in a picture, and he's like, I'm going to sell this one of these days. And then every time I ask him, it's like, it's still right there. He's still got it. Kind of like his Klon, like his gold horsey Klon is still there. So thanks again, everybody. Baby, thanks very much. TCM, thanks for coming out. Everybody, thanks so much. Again, Jason Laughlin did the music on the video, did a great job. And so check out Jason's stuff in the link. And I will see everybody really soon. Take care. Bye-bye.